Kicking off the list at number 10, Dr. Doom and Emma Frost. The White Queen of the Hellfire Club, starting off as an enemy to the X-Men, but an accident changed her ways. And eventually she became a co-headmaster of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters, training the last generation of mutants, Generation X. So she could transform her body into diamonds, which makes her extremely tough, both on the outside and the inside. And as for Dr. Doom, well, he was her boy toy while she still reigned as the White Queen. Their powers complemented each other so well, and then on Earth 807-128, the two of them were presumably married. Holy matrimony, we love to see it. Starting off the list with some nice marriage stuff, there we go.
And at number 9, Mystique and AZAZEL. Mystique has had some memorable and meaningful relationships in the past, but her weird fling with demon AZAZEL was not one of them. Essentially, AZAZEL was a demon who had been banished to another dimension, and the only way that he could return to Earth was by having kids with various lovers. Right. So he slept around a bunch in Uncanny X-Men issue 433 in 2004, a story that gives us a more in-depth look at Nightcrawler. So yeah, you probably know where this is going. Anywho, the demon slept with Mystique in Germany, who at the time was hitched to another dude the name of Christian Wagner. AZAZEL, ever the shining example of fatherhood, was gone faster than Nightcrawler could ever teleport, that's for sure, leaving her to raise the baby, who she named Kurt, all on her own. Then, to make this romance one for the books, years before this was even revealed, we found out that Mystique had actually killed her husband at the time, Christian Wagner, because she thought he was up to no good himself. Trust issues, anybody? I mean, can you blame her?
Alright friends, before we move on to this next point, if you want more weird love and lists like this, be sure to give this video a thumbs up. It really does help us out here at the channel. Number 8, Jim Gordon. In the Harley Quinn animated series, while the romance between Jim Gordon and Batman isn't quite official, it's still kind of implied that Jim has a bit of a thing for Batman. Or might, if he considered what his intense feelings potentially mean. In this show, we see Commissioner Gordon on the brink of a mental break, almost completely unhinged, bags under his eyes, and ranting at just about anyone who will listen to him about his distraught personal life and emotional baggage. He also just really likes to drink. He often turns to Batman, hoping he'll be his BFF, or more seeing him as his BFF and hoping he'll be there, and hoping he'll be that shoulder to cry on for him. But Batman only sees Jim as his co-worker in the series. However, he does begrudgingly agree to be friends with Commissioner Gordon near the end of the season 1 episode, "You're a damn good cop, Jim Gordon," in order to get Jim to give up Clayface's arm, who he has intensely befriended. Yeah, also if you haven't seen Harley Quinn the animated series, what are you doing with your life? Go watch it, it's so good.
Number 7, She-Hulk and Juggernaut. Shifting over now to Uncanny X-Men 435, The Trial of Juggernaut. It's standard professional practice to not hook up with your clients. I mean, I think, especially if that client is a big bad. So Jennifer Walters at this point was representing Juggernaut. And then, in a moment of heroic actions, Juggernaut kind of proves he's not all bad. He doesn't like save a cat out of a tree or anything remarkable, he just decides not to kill a guard. So Jen Walters is like, huh, interesting. Is this a scam? I wonder. Why didn't you escape? He's like, I don't know, man. My dad was a rocket scientist. I've always been a failure. Women's rights are the best. I'm a huge Jets fan. That's literally how it goes. And then Jen's like, oh, and it gets her attention because in the next page, the room is a goddamn mess. The bed has broken into the ground. The lamp is busted. And guys, worst of all, the windows are wide open. They didn't even try and close the curtains a foot. There's like nothing. It's just all glass. Freaks. You're freaks.
Number 6, Rogue. So this isn't main continuity Spider-Man or Rogue, but it's still a romantic moment that happened between the two characters, just on the Earth of 161. The two teamed up together in X-Men Forever 2. Rogue at the time had the guise of Nightcrawler, but still sports her very familiar brown and white hair. When Spider-Man encourages her to follow her heart, she warns him that she just might do that, sugar, and leans in to kiss him. I know what you're thinking, a kiss with Rogue could be deadly, but here Rogue was led to believe that she actually would be able to kiss Spider-Man without hurting him, so no worries there, don't panic. However, the romantic rooftop moment was then interrupted by Jean's telepathic shouts for Rogue's assistance. Those telepathic romance blocks, you know what I mean? Jean's like, help. Rogue's like, it's not a good time.
Number 5, Iron Man and Madame Masque. Now in the comics, it is no surprise Tony has a long list of lovers. Long. I mean, his charm, his smarts, his everything, you know. The first time we see Tony in the MCU, he's bringing over reporters for one-night stands. This is classic Tony Stark. So him and Madame Masque, aka Whitney Frost, were actually seeing each other for a hot minute, and they got so close that they even knew each other's secret identity. Wild, right? So Tony just loves dating villains. That's his thing. He's like, hey, you could ruin my life. It all started when Tony showed concern over her face, and not in the usual way either. Like, he saw through the scars, which is a great message. It's not always about looks, unless you're Jennifer Lawrence. I can't keep saying that, it's so stupid. Things got to a point where Madame Masque had to pick between Iron Man and her father, and it wasn't an easy task. Now they're still close, they're just not that close anymore. Classic villain stuff.
And at number 4, Deadpool and Lady Death. If you thought Thanos and Lady Death were odd, Deadpool and Death is even stranger, although weirdly compatible and kinda works. So Death met Deadpool initially during Wade's torture at the hands of Dr. Killbrew and Ajax at the Weapon X facility. He fell in love with her, and funny enough, those feelings are reciprocated. She shares his sense of humor, believe it or not. Thanos gets wind of Deadpool making moves on Death later on, shenanigans ensue, and eventually the Mad Titan uses a T-Ray to curse Deadpool with an ancient artifact that makes him unable to die. He becomes immortal, so he can never truly have death in the end. Eventually, Thanos does end up getting with Death, sort of, and they have a kid named Rot. Aww. Who they then destroy. Talk about love.
Number 3, Ra's al Ghul. Am I gonna talk about this weird kiss? Well, you bet I'm gonna talk about this weird kiss. During Batman Beyond, Ra's comes up with the perfect scheme to preserve his own life after the Lazarus Pit failed to restore him. He takes over Talia's body and goes to Bruce disguised as her, attempting to seduce Bruce into agreeing to treatments which will see his youth and his strength restored to him. While under the guise of Talia, at one point Ra's even kisses Bruce to really sell this to him. Later, it's revealed what Ra's was really up to, hoping to de-age Bruce and swap bodies with him, returning to Gotham posing as the son of Talia and Bruce. Fortunately, Batman, Terry McGinnis, stops him, and even Bruce seems weirded out by the fact that Ra's in Talia's body made out with him. Which, yeah, that's weird. Right?
Number 2, She-Hulk and Man-Wolf. The son of J. Jonah Jameson, John Jameson, a lot of J's in there, got married to She-Hulk. Yeah, it was during the Civil War where the two had been dating and then decided to take it up a notch in the terms of holy matrimony. She loved him so much she would purposely try and stay in her human form because Man-Wolf preferred that. Gotta love controlling relationships. Sounds lovely, but this is a weird romance list, so there's more to it than just that. See, Man-Wolf and She-Hulk had a rocky relationship, so when they got married, it was kind of weird. You're like, do they love each other? Is this kind of, he's really controlling and he's weird. Well, it turns out their love wasn't so natural after all. Star Fox, that weirdo that I mentioned earlier in this list, he was using his powers, his love powers, to make them love each other. So it was never really authentic. It's all a sham. So when she finds out, not only is she hurt and heartbroken, but she quickly slides over those divorce papers, and Man-Wolf and her go separate ways. But it wasn't easy for Man-Wolf. I mean, Jen Walters is a catch. I'd be pretty upset too. I'd be like crying and signing, tears would be dripping onto the paper. Oops, gotta get another one.
Number 1, Jessica Carradine. Remember that time Ben Reilly pined after the daughter of the man who murdered Uncle Ben? No? Well, take a seat, cause yeah, that happened. Jessica Carradine is the daughter of Dennis Carradine, the name that would later be given to the man who killed Peter Parker's Uncle Ben. She grew up with a hatred of Spider-Man, believing that the hero was actually to blame for the death of both Ben and her father. She believed that her dad was basically framed by Spidey. Needless to say, she and Ben's relationship is catastrophically ruined when she realizes that he is Spider-Man. I don't even know why Ben would go for this if he was aware of Jessica's name and her ties to the man who murdered Uncle Ben, but hey, I guess it wasn't technically his uncle since he's just Peter's clone. One of Peter's clones. It should be noted that Jessica did eventually come to terms with the fact that her father was actually the guilty party, but she still couldn't be with Ben because she was then just too worried for his safety, since he often puts himself in various dangerous situations as Spidey.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Black Widow and Bruce Banner. Okay, remember in Age of Ultron when Black Widow was the key to calming Banner down? They were in love, right? I mean, they were flirting at the beginning of the movie, and then even Steve Rogers was like, hey, you're not breaking any bylaws, haha, no sweat, brother. Like, it's a thing, it's happening. And then they're at Clint's secret little family farmhouse talking about running away together. And then after all of this, when Bruce returns to Earth, he says hi to Nat, and then she's like, hi Bruce, that's kind of it. Weird. Well, according to Infinity War co-screenwriter Stephen McFeely, he said they certainly tried to make this happen. We have scenes, we wrote them, we shot them, of the two of them hashing it out. You've been gone, I've moved on, that kind of stuff. It became very clear that it was a scene that was not really essential to the plot. It couldn't survive Infinity War. That thing has to be on rails just to get to the finish line. Couldn't wrap up loose threads just because you wanted to. I mean, that's fair, that's a good call. But I feel like Endgame, we could have spiced it up a little bit, no? I mean, Black Widow dies and Bruce like throws a bench, maybe like 90 yards. It's not even that big of a throw. I'd throw a fit. I'd throw a fit if Scarlett Johansson was my girlfriend and she died. I'd throw a big fit.
Number 9, Wonder Woman. These two are just kind of weird together because, well, they're not really on the same playing field. That being said, a lot of people love Batman and Wonder Woman together and heartily ship them, but for me, I personally think Wonder Woman is better without a man in her life. Even Steve Trevor, who often ends up being her mainstay love interest throughout many of her series. Diana and Bruce, beyond heroics, also don't really share a lot in common, and while Bruce likely has much to gain from being in a relationship with Diana in terms of what he can learn and how he can grow as an individual with her, I don't think Wonder Woman has as much to gain from him. Not to like super diss Bruce or anything like that, or Batman. Not to mention Bruce's terrible track record when it comes to, well, how he tends to treat his romantic partners, so might not be good. Although maybe Wonder Woman would put him in his place, but
And at number 8, Dick Grayson and Helena Wayne. Dick and Helena were a weird pairing. Now Helena is the child of Bruce Wayne and Selena Kyle from Earth 2, and at first glance her relationship with Dick kinda makes sense. Grayson falls for the daughter of his mentor, it's a bit of a forbidden romance, the two of them are into that. But what really makes it weird is the fact that the two of them practically grew up together, looking at each other as siblings. I mean, maybe if you look at this through the lens of like a bad romantic comedy, that isn't that weird. But what is kinda weird is things that these two say to one another when discussing their relationship. Like this classic gem. Helena says to Dick, "And I am a big girl now, you know?" To which he replies, "I noticed. That's why I went to the far side of this ventilator. Even though I diapered you when you were a baby, I assume my peaking privileges expired years ago." Ew, what the hell, Dick Grayson, that's gross. It's crap like that that made them destined to fail, if we're being perfectly honest.
Number 7, Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy. Another gross one, coming at ya. Norman Osborn, who we all know as the menacing Green Goblin, one of, if not Spider-Man's biggest foe. So when we revisit the Since Past storyline, it comes with a shock that it's revealed that Norman and Gwen Stacy were a thing before he killed her. Yeah, villains are weird, I don't know. How did this happen, you ask? Well, it was revealed that before her death, the two of them had an affair, and if that's not bad enough, they even had some kids on the low, some sneaky little kids. Twins too, ironically. This story is crazy. Spider-Man ends up fighting the twins, all the while he has to deal with Gwen Stacy being dead, and now this new information's in his brain, and he's fighting his own twins, but it's not his twins, it's Norman's twins. Honestly, I feel bad for Peter a lot. This guy goes through the worst time ever. Number 6, Hulk and She-Hulk. I'll be honest, I was gonna save this one for number 1 on the list, but I didn't want this video to end and then have you guys sitting there like, gross. So in the Old Man Logan storyline, it gets a little ew. We have this gang, the Hulk gang. Yeah, sounds pretty sick, right? They go around bashing people in who don't pay rent. Hell, if that was a Disney Plus show that was announced, I'd be so pumped. Oh wait, Hulk gang is the result of She-Hulk and the Hulk having kids together? I feel like I've said enough already, so now allow me to show you enough. Yep, yuck that. No way.
Number 5, Jezebel Jet. One of the weirdest relationships Batman has had by far. His relationship with Jezebel Jet is strange considering all the revelations it came with. Jezebel was originally presented as the leader of a small nation, and well, she was the leader of a small nation, but she was also secretly working for the evil organization known as the Black Glove, or well, maybe not so secretly, apparently. Jezebel initially rebuked Bruce's advances when they first met, claiming she did not want to be another notch on his bedpost, but eventually the two did end up dating, and it even got serious enough that rumors spread of a potential proposal and engagement between the two. However, that definitely was not meant to be, as Jezebel ended up betraying Bruce, and I put that in air quotes because, well, Batman would actually later claim that he knew of her true allegiance and that she was planning to betray him all along, and that their whole seemingly real relationship from both sides had therefore been faked? How confusing.
Number 4, Mary Jane Watson. Again. Another weird Spidey pairing with Mary Jane also comes to us from The Ultimates, because Spider-Man's clones all had his memories. They were just all basically into MJ. And not just Jessica. All the clones were meant to have their memories wiped so that they could develop their own identities and also be used in the process, but they escaped the facility where they were kept before this could happen. As a result, Kane, who also here sports an even creepier version of his half-melted face, ends up trapping Mary Jane and kidnapping her, claiming it's all out of love for her. Oh, if someone does that to you, you just need to get out of there. Seriously. Which is what MJ tries to do. She's like, no, let me out! Initially, she thinks that he's Peter from a silhouette, but then when she sees his face, she's horrified and knows something is definitely wrong, and this probably isn't her Peter Parker. Of course, she is right. Kane, out of love for MJ, wants to protect her by making her stronger. To do this, he exposes her to the Oz formula, which ends up turning her into a big red monster temporarily. I bet you thought I was going to say a big red dog, but no, that's Clifford. Fortunately, the real Peter Parker shows up and is able to use his presence to calm MJ down, transforming her back into a normal teenage girl. Well, normal. I mean, I feel like she just went through some stuff and she might transform again, but sort of normal. Mostly normal.
And at number 3, Scarlet Witch and Vision. Much like in the MCU, Scarlet Witch and Vision have a thing. Except, in the comics, that thing turns into marriage, which then turned into divorce and heartbreak. Yep. So let's backtrack a sec here. Both of these heroes were members of the Avengers when they started dating. Vision is a robot. The two of them would go on to have children who were twins, who they would name William and Thomas. Vision is a robot. Surprise, surprise, turns out the twins were actually fragments of villain Mephisto's soul that Wanda, thanks to her extremely powerful abilities, had turned into babies. Wanda's mind was then erased to prevent her from the pain of losing her kids, which is something that didn't remain intact because she would then turn on the Avengers because of it, losing her mind and killing Vision, the robot. But because he is a robot, he's never really truly dead now, is he? Anywho, the two didn't last, something that Roy Thomas, who had written for the Avengers, seemingly didn't mind, since he's openly admitted that the only reason the pair were ever together was because the team needed a couple. But if her number 1 spot is any, sign of that, surely that's not for the best. More on that later though. Vision would go on to appear in a Tom King written solo series that explored his life after Wanda, in which he strived for a private life of normalcy by creating a family of robots for himself, because he is a robot, which included a robot wife that he modeled after Scarlet Witch to an extent. It was weird. Despite how unsettling that comes across, it's actually one of the better comics written about Vision, and he's quite the character study.
Number 2, Thanos and Death. So in the MCU, Thanos wanted to bring balance to the universe. Too many mouths to feed, not enough to go around, or something like that. That was his main goal. He wants the stones for this reason. The comics were a bit more complicated. See, Thanos has always been infatuated over Death. Lady Death, that is. She has all the knowledge of the universe. I mean, she's kind of a catch, can't lie. Thanos, being a Titan, can absorb cosmic energy and then project it. He's a fan of these types of entities. And what better way of getting her attention than wiping out half of all life in the universe? Now, this is a wild couple. Lady Death hasn't even spoken one word to Thanos. She much prefers to send her minions to deliver messages. It's kind of like in class when you're like, hey, can you tell Brittany to tell Beth, to tell Amber, to tell Rachel that I kind of like her? And they're like, you got it. We'll get back to you in 1 week. You know, the cosmic version of playing hard to get. And then when this happens, people start to get desperate for attention. So desperate that Thanos created a female Titan just to make Death jealous. Taraxia has entered the chat. And she's just a big ball of fun, you know? I'm actually a big fan of how she rips Iron Man's head off. That's really, you gotta pick them well. One of the most interesting parts of this relationship with the two is the entity created called Rot. So when Thanos died, his energy merged with Death's, creating this moving void of nothingness. It was both alive and dead at the same time. It was like this weird offspring. So Death couldn't even sense it. God, Thanos really knows how to pick them.
Number 1, Barbara Gordon. I mean, if we are talking about weird Batman ships and relationships, this has to be one of the weirdest ones out there. Honestly, if you think Batman and Robin are weird, this is on the same level as that. Barbara Gordon is also known as Batgirl, a member of the Bat family and Batman's protege and sidekick. She's also known for being the longtime love interest of Dick Grayson, who to Batman is like a son. She is also known for being the daughter of Commissioner Jim Gordon, Batman's colleague and his friend. And yet, outside the main continuity, Batman and Batgirl have slept together and had a relationship. At one point in Batman Beyond 2.0, the digital comic series, Bruce even got Babs pregnant while Dick was out of town, and a flashback story. Awkward for so many reasons. While it's important to consider this is an alternate universe and many people therefore don't consider it to be canon, it's still, in my mind, pretty weird and messed up that Bab is part of a love triangle featuring both Dick Grayson and Bruce Wayne.
Number 10, Mockingbird. This wasn't a weird pairing because it was so much really bad or anything, it was just more weird because it was pretty random. Although these two had some fun moments, most fans felt that there just wasn't much staying power between them. Also, Spider-Man is a major jokester, and Mockingbird seemed to actively dislike laughing at Peter's jokes. She's pretty no nonsense. The nice thing is that Peter didn't have to worry about Bobby when it came to her being strong, independent, and being able to take on any baddies who might come her way because of her attachment to Spider-Man. In the end, however, everyone kind of felt the relationship was more of a placeholder, something for now but not for forever, as these two both had much more memorable and well-suited pairings when it came to the world of comics matchmaking. And there's also that weird thing of, they don't really have much in common besides their work, so there's that.
Number 9, Hulk and Company. Okay, for this one we go to Ultimate Wolverine vs. Hulk. So Wolverine at this point is a little occupied, okay? He's on the way to take out the Jolly Green Giant. So he heads to a Tibian town, he's tracking him, he's using his sense, and then finally he gets his sights on him, and let's just say it's a sight you wouldn't forget. Yeah, he walks in on Hulk with not one, not two, but like 40 women. "Hi Bruce," he says before popping out his claws. It's crazy Wolverine tracked him down by sniffing. I feel like he got to that door and was like, yeah, I'm gonna come back later. Something's wrong there. Something's not nice in there. Number 8, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch. Okay, this one we might judge a little bit. One of you guys referred to this as twincest in our last video, so I had to kind of take that and put it in my pocket and now bring it back to life, because it's an amazing term and I'm going to use it forever. So here it is. Twincest. I'm referring now to the Ultimate X-Men series. Now, I know when it comes to villains, these two aren't the worst of the worst, but in this case, they're siblings and they're together, which is kind of the worst. Now, I know when it comes to villains, these two aren't like the worst of the worst. I mean, in this case, they're siblings, so they're naturally close. They're together, like a bit too much together. So I have to mention them in this story. So since they were a big deal in the Brotherhood, they were very dedicated to the cause. I mean, a little too dedicated at times. Because we first meet the pair in X-Men issue 4, and then right off the bat, we see Quicksilver defending his sister, like a little bit too much. Because Toad is chewing his food too loudly, Quicksilver's like, ugh, my sister's right there, you obnoxious fool. And then in 2001, the pair were in Ultimates, and then that's when we see this connection, but it's a little bit more connected. Ooh, it's so gross to talk about. So the Ultimates issue had a front cover that made readers do a quick double take, with the duo side by side, hand in hand. And not even like the first date hand holding either, like their fingers were interlocked, like they were like, got that sweaty grip, It was a subtle note, but one that has lived rent-free in our brains ever since.
Number 7, Elizabeth Tyne. Elizabeth Tyne was initially introduced by the name Janine Godby, which was an alias that she assumed to escape her past. The weird thing about this relationship wasn't so much how it unfolded, though being in a relationship with any clone of a superhero is always going to be weird, but more in how it started, and in Elizabeth's resemblance to another major love interest from Spider-Man comics, Mary Jane Watson. I specifically just want to focus on the weird interactions in the beginning of this relationship though, although it is weird that, Ben Reilly's a clone and then Janine/Elizabeth just happens to resemble Mary Jane. That's pretty weird. Ben Reilly approached Janine initially and upon their first meeting was taken with her, asking her out in the most bizarre and kind of strangely movie-esque way. He's like, look, I know this is going to sound like a line, but well, I'm new in town. I know that's lame, but I swear it's true. It's just lame that you're using it as a line, Ben. So I'm new in town, and well, I was wondering if maybe we could have, I don't know, dinner tonight? And initially Janine just turns him down, and I think we can see why from that thing that he just said, which is a lot. I feel like Ben also got Peter's awkward charm as well in the cloning process. However, because it is charm, even though it is awkward, Janine immediately changes her mind because, yeah, awkward charm. Ben never makes it to their date, however, because hero stuff, but does run into Janine and apologizes and asks if they can try again. Now, she initially says no once more, and I actually love this like one series of panels so much. I wish that they had just left it there because it's really funny, but she actually adds like right after that he can take her to lunch right now. How spontaneous and romantic and kind of presumptuous, but okay. I also like that he's just like, alright, great, I wasn't doing anything. It's like, that's, if that were me, I'd probably be like, well, maybe not now, but like maybe in a bit.
And at number 6, AVIX and a dinosaur. What's a weird romance list without a little bestiality? Yep, that's a thing I just said. Rather than go the route of Supergirl f***ing her horse, which is a real thing and definitely gonna make it onto our part 3 of this list, we decided to go with a more absurd entry this time around. None other than AVIX and his dinosaur lover pal. So AVIX is a member of the galactic superhero team, the Wanderers, who has the ability to transform his body into any creature of flight that his imagination can whip up. This includes dragons, friends, but usually it's birds. In 1988, in Wanderers issue 12, the team would end up on a planet filled with dinosaurs that was headed towards extinction via radioactive fog. AVIX comes up with a plan to save the dinosaurs to ensure that evolution still occurs. What's his great idea? Well, he suggests that they have sex with them to pass along their genetic immunity to the fog. Actually, sounds more like an excuse to bang a dinosaur if you're asking me. So he tells the team, and the majority of them are like pretty traumatized by the idea, except for those 2 kinky f***s over there who are like, this could actually work. And they have a weird grin on their face. It's just, no, bad panel. Anywho, AVX does it, but the team never actually check in to see if this genetic experiment even panned out. So yeah, it was all just an excuse to f*** a dinosaur. Now to be fair, he transformed into a prehistoric dinosaur himself when he gets it on with a female of the same species, but hey, look at the cover of this issue and tell me that that makes it any better. Right, didn't think it did.
Number 5. Deborah Whitman. This is an interesting relationship considering it was very one-sided. Deborah Whitman was a secretary at Empire State University where Peter was a student. She pined after Peter, and although at times it seemed like Peter didn't even notice her existence, the two started dating. Needless to say, they didn't make for a great partnership due to the fact that Peter kept having to bail on their dates to attend to heroic business as Spider-Man, but didn't really want to confide in Deborah, so he just gave her a ton of really lame excuses. Eventually, the two broke up, but Deborah remained obsessed with him and began to fantasize and hallucinate that he was Spider-Man, in essence making the ultimate excuse for his behavior while also idolizing him. When her therapist approached Peter after learning of this and asked him to wear a Spider-Man suit to help shock her out of her fantasy, he refused to do so, which obviously the therapist was like, well, that's weird, but okay. Deborah, becoming delusional, later ended up in a toxic relationship as a result of all of this, making excuses for her then husband. Fortunately, Peter did eventually confess to her that he was Spider-Man, which helped Deborah to move forward and woke her to the truth of her current relationship, motivating her to get a divorce. Thank goodness. Still pretty crazy.
Number 4. She-Hulk and Tony Stark. I mean, it was only a matter of time before these two crossed paths and did the dirty. So they're both known for their crazy hookups. And then in She-Hulk issue 17, we see it go down. But it's different, okay? So Tony at this time is the director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Jen Walters at this point was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. So it all starts with a debriefing. Of course, a debriefing. Now, was the debriefing professional in any manner? Do we have PowerPoints and laser pointers? No, we didn't. No, Tony gets a candlelit dinner aboard the helicarrier. Even Clay Quarterman's like, hey, maybe I should debrief her. I don't know, just a thought. Get out of here, perv. The issue is interesting because like I said, they're both known to be the soups who get around town, but Tony gets treated like this cool playboy dude. They're like, yeah, keep doing it, man. Keep getting those girls. And then She-Hulk gets all the shame. The double standards here are nuts. So while they're about to open this conversation up, Tony starts to say, well, Jen, try looking at it from this angle. Bam, evil attacks in the form of robots. And they're not even out of bed yet. Great timing. She-Hulk's like, yeah, don't take this the wrong way, but you should definitely get dressed right now. It would have been a good conversation too. She-Hulk would have told them exactly what's up and the readers would have been like, okay, heard. Fair. Number 3, Scarlet Witch and Dr. Doom. Our man Doom at it again. Okay, we look over now to the Avengers, the Children's Crusade mini-series, where we have the young Avengers looking for Wanda because her son Wiccan started experiencing reality-altering powers just like Wanda. So we wanted to check in with Wanda to make sure that, you know, reality itself hasn't shifted or anything colossal. So we found out that she was being held at Doom Castle. So after a quick rescue trip, he discovers her and Doom in matching colors. Something's different. They look kind of good. And she's planning on marrying Doom. Ooh. And she doesn't even remember her origin or anything at all. It's just a nightmare. All she knows is that she's in love with Dr. Doom. So Wiccan tries the obvious, right? He's like, hey, you're Scarlet Witch, you married Vision, you have 2 kids, you thought they were dead, but they're actually... And before Wiccan can even finish telling Wanda that they're indeed alive, Doom steps in to shut him up. Jim's like, enough out of that guy. We got a big wedding tomorrow. We should get some sleep. No? I don't know. The Avengers, the Children's Crusade issues 1 to 9 are super fun. You gotta check it out. We love red weddings.
Number 2, Mia Flores. One of the most random when it comes to Peter's interactions with women. Mia Flores kissed Peter while he was out with Carly Cooper, Harry Osborn, and Lily Hollister. Like, she just randomly grabbed him and then kissed him. She didn't even introduce herself first. She was just like, I'm gonna kiss you. I'm like, oh my goodness. Peter did not sign up for that. This was all part of a ploy for Mia to basically get in with Harry's entourage, wanting to get closer to him. But the weird part of the whole interaction was just how stalkery Mia was acting during this whole thing. It was like she was out to kill. She was like, Peter, I'm coming for you in this club. And Peter, rather than just confront Mia and be like, I'm really not into you and no thank you, decided to, of course, jump out a window instead. Because that's how Peter Parker likes to solve problems sometimes. This was less of a relationship and more a weird attempt at a romantic and sexy moment from Mia, but it's just really awkward and strange, and I felt it was so weird that I needed to include it, even though it's not a full relationship. Technically.
And finally, in at number 1, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne. Despite the fact that the MCU has portrayed these two as a long-lost romance finally reunited, the fact of the matter is, Hank and Janet have had a really turbulent romantic history together throughout the comics, something that you bet your butt will never see adapted up on the big screen. While there's a whole lot of unfortunate circumstances that have occurred between them, often due to the mismanagement of Hank's mental health, perhaps the biggest incident worth bringing up on our list is the time that Hank beat Janet in Avengers issue 213. Now at the time, Hank was operating under the alias of Yellow Jacket, a period when he was suffering from schizophrenia, had taken on the Yellow Jacket persona, forgetting who he was, and then eventually remembered that he was Hank. Then, with the Avengers, acted out of line and senselessly beaten up a foe of the Avengers who had surrendered. When he was put on trial for it by Captain America and about to get kicked off the team, Hank came up with a scheme to build a robot to fight the Avengers that only he could step in and defeat, showing them how important he was to the team overall. Janet did not think this was a good idea, which resulted in Hank beating her when she attempted to stop him. Because of this, he has gone down in history as a bit of a wife beater. Jim Shooter, who wrote the issue, claimed that Hank striking Janet was never actually intentional, and was due to a miscommunication between him and artist Bob Hall for taking his direction to the extreme and having Hank hit her. Sure, Janet would eventually leave Hank for a while afterwards. Now, this isn't the only time their relationship has been toxic. The Ultimates version of these two is pretty damn awful, with Hank literally trying to murder Janet at one point. Regardless, you can see why the romance gets the top spot on our list.
Number 10, Julie Madison. Not so much weird in the way her romance with Bruce went, especially considering this tends to be how most of them go. But Julie Madison had probably one of the weirdest romances because she was Bruce's first love that no one really ever talks about now. Julie Madison was first introduced in Detective Comics Volume Number 1 in issue 31. She was a socialite and later an actress originally who often played the role of damsel in distress in stories featuring her, where she would then need to be rescued by Batman. She also was dating and engaged to Bruce Wayne himself, but broke off their engagement because Bruce wouldn't get a real job, not knowing that, well, he was Batman. Although also kind of a weird criticism coming from a socialite, but I guess Julie had the job of an actress, working under the stage name Portia Storm, and Bruce being the owner of Wayne Enterprises maybe didn't count. Granted, of course, Wayne Enterprises wouldn't actually be introduced in the comics until 1987, and Bruce does respond with the fact that he simply cannot be bothered with anything remotely connected with work. So yeah, I kind of get her mentality. She was like, you gonna get a real job? And he was like, girl, I have so much money, no. It's a fair response, but it's a fair concern.
Number 9, Mary Jane Watson. I know, how could Mary Jane make the list again, you might wonder? You're like, Amanda, really, Mary Jane? Which Spider-Man is she paired with now that's so weird, you wonder? Well, once again, I am not talking about her relationship with Peter Parker, although if we really wanted to explore some of their alternate relationships from alternate Earths and some specific moments in their relationship, there are a few times that even those two have been weird together. But no, this time around we are talking about Mary Jane Watson and Spider-Woman Jessica Drew. When did this happen? Where did this happen? In the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610. 2010. The two weren't ever officially together, but Jessica definitely had feelings for MJ as she shared the memories, thoughts, and emotions even of Peter Parker, who she was a clone of. Yeah, in Ultimates, Jessica Drew has a different origin story, and like Ben or Kane are on Earth 616, she herself is also a clone of Peter, just a female clone, who was created by Dr. Kurt Connors and Dr. Otto Octavius for the CIA and FBI. The weird thing was less that Jessica was attracted to MJ, and more that she was attracted to her because of Peter's memories. None of her memories were her own, because that's how cloning works in this reality apparently.
Number 8. She-Hulk and Star Fox. Of course I have to throw this one in the mix. So Eros, aka Star Fox, has this really messed up ability where he can make anybody he comes in contact with fall in love. Like Cupid, but with more yuck. Yeah, he even has the face of somebody who does weird shit like that. He looks like every Brad I've ever met. So the two of them hook up, and Jen even talked about how it was a great time. Okay. Cut to She-Hulk issue 6. Jen is defending Star Fox in a assault case, and the question is, will this affect his Avengers status? Like, yes, most definitely. That's usually how this works. So Jen got to thinking, although she made the first move, did he make it happen? Well, it all ended up being consensual, and Ero's love touch powers were deactivated. Probably for the better, because, well, I'll get into that a little bit later on.
Number 7. Talia al Ghul. Even if you ship these two together, you have to admit how weird their relationship really is. Especially when it comes to them having a child together, where all versions of how that went down are just really messed up, and involve people having really weirdly positive feelings at times about things that should not be considered positive. The most well-known child of theirs together being Damian Wayne, who Talia forced herself on Bruce to get. Pretty awful. Add in the fact that they both come from two different sides of the tracks, and it makes for a messy romance, which for some works. I think Catwoman and Batman actually managed to not always see eye to eye and make it really work between them, but Talia and Bruce not having a lot of compromise between them makes it much more challenging. Also, she forced herself on him to get a son! This is not okay. Not okay. Not okay.
Number 6. Magneto and Mystique. So in the comics, Magneto is a smooth-talking, metal-moving man. He dates other villains like Rogue or Scarlet Witch, but in the Fox movies we see a new relationship with Mystique. Jennifer Lawrence and Michael Fassbender, I mean probably the most attractive couple on the planet. Oh god. But by the time we get to X-Men Apocalypse, the two of them have a lot in common. See, they both would do anything to defend mutants. That's their whole deal. That's what makes them kind of evil. They even bond over the fact that Magneto prefers the real her. It's become a huge meme where he's like, I'm talking about the real you. And then it shows like her all blue scaly things and he's like, perfection. There we go. The mutant look. So off the bat, I'm sure she's a fan of his respect for mutant rights. Because in X-Men First Class, everybody else close to Mystique wanted her to hide her true self. They were like, ew, put on a sweater, or look like Jennifer Lawrence. Something better. So when somebody says, hey, be you and only you, it's truly beautiful. I mean, it's kind of hard not to develop feelings. And then in Days of Future Past, there of course wasn't too much going on between them. I mean, that tends to happen when you shoot at somebody with the intention of killing them. What are you, OJ? Get out of here.
Moving on to number 5, Thanos and Lady Death. Okay, sure, this relationship is a bit one-sided. It's also Thanos and the entity of death, which is a really interesting person to fall in love with, or rather, entity. So the reason why Thanos does anything that he ever does in the comics for the most part, or at least earlier on, is the fact that he is in love with Death and trying to court her. We're talking the entity Death, who presents herself as a lady. So, he sees the Cosmic Cube to prove that he loved her. Did it work? No. In the Infinity Gauntlet story arc, Thanos wipes out half of the universe to prove that he's worthy of her love. She doesn't buy it. In between fighting off the heroes of the galaxy in that same story arc, Death ignores him. Death never gives him an answer to any of his questions. She often rolls her eyes at him. He gets more and more frustrated. But that being said, she hasn't always given him the cold shoulder though. But usually any kind of affection or attention Thanos has gotten from her has typically been because Death has used him for something. She gave him powers, but then he kind of went and ruined his chances by attempting to go above and beyond by collecting all of the Infinity Gems. So you can see why she'd probably get annoyed. He has long portions of cringe dialogue in the Infinity Gauntlet arc where he goes on about how he isn't worthy of her. It's actually kind of a riot.
Number 4, Joker and Harley Quinn. Making her first appearance in the animated series, Harleen Quinzel, most commonly seen as the Joker's love life and twisted partner in crime, started off as an intern psychiatrist at Arkham Asylum, and then in the 1994 graphic novel The Batman Adventures, Mad Love, we see Harleen's origin play out. So Dr. Harleen Frances Quenzel started to fall in love with the madman as the days went by. And it's an amazing graphic novel. It actually won the Eisner and Harvey Awards for Best Single Issue Comic of the Year. So if you haven't read it, you know what you're doing right after this video ends. You're welcome. She becomes intrigued with how the Joker's mind works. She volunteers to help treat him. After helping him escape numerous times, it is no surprise that she became his sidekick and lover, donning a jester suit of her own. They're just a bad couple. One of those couples you see in public and you're like, I bet they fight a lot. I bet they fight a lot about stupid shit, for sure.
Number 3, Louise Kennedy. The story of Louise Kennedy comes with a pretty powerful moral. Never date Kane Parker. Louise was a cop in Salt Lake City who had turned dirty and was on the criminal drug lord Vincent Tannen's payroll. She and Kane shared a night of passion, and both had feelings for the other. Both became this light in the darkness for one another, this hope that they could be redeemed or saved or become better. After Kane found out about Louise's betrayal, however, he ended up being forced to confront her and eventually killed her as a result. After snapping her neck, he left his mark on her, burning her face with the mark of Kane, shocking Ben Reilly, who was actually there to witness all of this, and whom he'd actually saved in killing Louise. It's a very terrible end to a relationship. Let me just burn your face after you're already dead.
Number 2, Cheetah. In the Justice League animated series, Cheetah and Batman have a really weird, sexy moment together. Master of Seduction, Batman, is obviously meant to be playing Cheetah here, and she totally falls for it, sealing their newfound respect for one another with a kiss. It is also heavily implied here that Batman has a cat fetish. I'll let you be the judge on that one, though I suspect there might actually be something more to that bit than it just being something you say to manipulate a cat lady like Cheetah.
And finally, number 1, Hawkeye and She-Hulk. Okay, with all these new Disney shows being announced, there's like 50 of them, I swear. One of them that I'm most excited for is the animated What If series. There's a lot of fun and a lot of weird in these comics. Like Volume 2, Issue 114, for example, we see Jen Walters and Hawkeye have a kid. Yeah, they name him CJ, little Clint Jr. He shares both skills of his parents, that of being green and lean, while also knowing how to shoot an arrow. It's a great combo. You're gonna get a lot of shit done. You're gonna kill it at birthday parties. This all happens when the Beyonders assemble heroes and villains to scrap it out during the events of Secret Wars on Battleworld. But what if they never left after they settled a truce? Although we don't see the two in their awkward flirting, what's your favorite color? Stages, they seem to hit it off really quite well. I love the what if stuff. I mean, Captain America and Rogue, I mean, that alone is just, there's a lot of crazy in there.
And at number 10, Norman Osborn and Gwen Stacy. While Spider-Man is one of Marvel's biggest superheroes and is quite beloved to readers, that doesn't mean he hasn't been victim to some pretty cringe-worthy writing over the years. One of those cases left us with a terrible aftertaste. It was this unfortunate and unexpected pairing, Gwen Stacy and Peter's arch nemesis, who is sometimes an anti-hero but not really all that often, Norman Osborn. It was the product of a bit of retconning. Turns out that prior to Gwen Stacy's tragic demise, Osborn had hooked up with her, a reveal that unravels itself in the Sins Past storyline in Amazing Spider-Man between issues 509 and 514. Peter discovers that Gwen was cheating on him with Osborn, that she ended up getting pregnant and then broke off the affair. Osborn was pissed, and that was his intention for going after her in the night Gwen Stacy died in the Amazing Spider-Man issue 121 in 1973. Turns out she had given birth to a baby though, which actually was twins, not just one baby, who then would become assassins who tried to kill Parker. Worst part is, it was MJ who revealed a good chunk of this story to Peter, having known some of the details for quite some time.
Number 9, She-Hulk and Juggernaut. Shifting over now to Uncanny X-Men 435, titled The Trial of Juggernaut. I mean, it's standard practice to not hook up with your clients, right? Like if I have a job and then I'm helping somebody, like say, I don't know, if I'm a lawyer, I shouldn't want to hook up with who I'm representing because I would get fired, right? So when Jennifer Walters represented Juggernaut, and in a moment of heroic actions, Juggernaut kind of proves that he's not the worst guy in the world. I mean, he saves a guard from his own wrath. He was gonna kill him, but he's like, you know what? Get out of here. You're too cool, get out of here. Happy Boxing Day, get going now. Yeah, he just let him go, and then he didn't even bother trying to escape. So Jen Walters is like, huh, interesting. Is this the Juggernaut we all know? Why is he like this? Is this a scam? Why did you escape, sir? What's going on? And he's like, I don't know, man. My dad did some rocket scientist stuff. I feel like I've always been a failure. I don't know, women's rights are the best. Let's hook up. And then Jen is now seeing the soft side of Juggernaut, and she's interested, all right? She can read people, that's her job. So she's like, okay, there's more to this guy than meets the eye. Okay, then the next page, the room's a mess. They've hooked up. They had one hell of a one-night stand, literally breaking their nightstand in the meantime. I mean, the bed's broken into the ground, the lamp's busted, the window's open. It's like they want to watch. So you know what, freaky or not, it's still a romance. We won't judge.
Number 8. Carly Cooper. Carly ended up basically hating Spider-Man after being in a relationship with him, which was pretty unfortunate considering that she was a fan favorite when it came to her relationship with Peter. Carly was very patient with Peter initially and didn't even seem to mind when Peter would kinda zone out when they were together and not even notice when she left a gathering early, which is pretty awkward. She worked as a forensic specialist for the New York Police Department, so they seemed like a logical match. Both were brainy and involved in the fight for justice. However, when Peter Parker revealed that he was Spider-Man, Carly found herself unable to continue their relationship and the two broke up. However, Carly would still be haunted by this revelation and secret, which she fought very hard to protect. It eventually caused her to move away from New York for a time after a traumatic event where she found herself exposed to the Goblin formula and transformed, being given the name Monster and recruited into the Goblin King's Goblin Army. Carly was later cured, but this experience would definitely stay with her.
And at number 7, Kitty Pryde and Colossus. These two were always a kinda odd couple from the get-go, but to many they're each other's OTP since they have been attracted to one another pretty much from when Kitty was first introduced into the comics in Uncanny X-Men back in the early 80s. Now at the time Jean Grey was gone, so Kitty ended up getting a lot of attention as the new girl on the team, with her romantic relationship with Colossus becoming the romance of the series for a while. But this is where it gets a little odd. It's the fact that these two actually have a pretty significant age gap. When Kitty first joined the X-Men, she's supposed to be around 14 years old. 14. And Colossus? Well, he's almost 20 years her senior. Chris Claremont, who was penning Uncanny X-Men at the time, had been pretty open about how he felt. That two individuals can love each other regardless of age. I mean, it's a nice sentiment, except for the fact that it's generally a good idea to not date someone who isn't of legal age, especially if you've got 18 or so years on them. Just saying. That being said, that was something that was explored in the comic, with Colossus refusing to sleep with her because of her age. But they're still making out lots, so...
Number 6. Andrea Beaumont. Andrea Beaumont in the animated universe was a young love of Bruce's. The two fell in love during their time together at Gotham University. Good old Gotham U. And were even engaged to be married, but Andrea had to break off the engagement as she and her father were leaving to go to Europe. Her father, you see, was involved in a criminal money laundering racket and had stolen money from the mob bosses that he worked for, turning that into a profitable fortune all its own. To escape his insidious partners who would kill him if they found out about his theft and found out that he was leaving, he left Gotham and hid himself and Andrea in Europe. Eventually, her father's location was sold out and he ended up being murdered by those he'd betrayed years before. Andrea, unable to accept this injustice, took her father's fortune and used it to train and get equipment to turn herself into the masked vigilante known as the Phantasm, returning to Gotham years later to get revenge on those responsible for her father's death. She also returned as Andrea Beaumont, claiming she had some accounts to settle and once again ran into her old flame, Bruce Wayne. Eventually, the two discovered one another's identities, Bruce Wayne as Batman and Andrea as the Phantasm. This revelation actually dramatically surprised Batman, especially as he had suspected that the Phantasm was a man. We all suspected that, just because how the Phantasm looked, and then we were like, huh, there you go. Don't judge a book by its cover. Just because someone looks like a man doesn't mean they are a man. Gender pronouns. Look at this. We're having revelations here.
Number 5, Hercules and She-Hulk. She's had a crush on Hercules for a while. I mean, I feel like most of us did growing up, no? He looks similar to Star Fox, so clearly she's got a type. In She-Hulk issue 30, it opens with this shot. She's expressing how if she's gonna fall off the wagon, it could be worse than having it be with Hercules. I mean, fair. But how does something like this actually come to fruition? Well, she mentioned falling off the wagon, but the only wagon that's falling is Hercules' wagon right into the palm of her hand. That's right, a move she picked up from the X-Men. She straight up grabs Hercules by his bum bum and then just hucks him at their giant-sized enemy, which is a great power move, something we almost saw last year in Endgame, actually. Yeah, Ant-Man was gonna throw the Hulk, who's gonna throw Spider-Man, and then he would have probably died. That's a lot of power. So this plus taking down an enemy together, things are heating up. There's a lot of chemistry, a lot of chemistry. After all, once you use somebody's assets like that, the rest kind of makes sense. I mean, maybe not in an RV in a parking lot, but hey, I'm not judging. I'm not judging.
Number 4, Harley Quinn. We have seen some pretty flirty moments happen between these two across various comics, both in the main continuity and outside of it. In the alternate world of White Knight, Harley and Bats even seem to be moving towards some kind of romantic relationship or love connection after the death of Jack Napier, who was once the Joker, then reformed, and then lost his mind kind of again before he passed away. Recently, we've seen Batman and Harley teaming up during Joker War, and they've had some kind of strange and seemingly intimate, emotional moments together. Although nothing physical ever happened between the two, unless it happened off panel or something. But definitely some emotional stuff is happening there. There's some relationship building. While Harley has always had a thing for Bruce Wayne, she has no interest in Batman, and so it really seems weird to me when writers or fans seem interested in matching these two up. Because like Harley with Bruce Wayne I could maybe see, but like Harley with Batman.
Number 3, Kyra and the Hulk. Planet Hulk is a great run. We have this savage alien planet, barbarian tribes. Kind of like Gladiator vibes, it's great. And when it comes to love, it's still in the air, just this time around it's a bit more of a duty rather than a passion. So we find Kyra old strong and the two hit it off. Like really quickly. Hulk comes out and asks her to be his queen. Just like that, let's do it. Sure, Game of Thrones style, all right. Our guy doesn't waste any time. We'd love to see it. Then their wedding, shadow ceremony happens and out comes 2 kids. After her death, yeah, she gave birth to Scar and his evil other half like in secret, Hero Kala. I wish we saw this unfold on Sakaar in the MCU. I feel like Ragnarok should have been a touch darker. All right, it was too fun. It was too fun. Sue me, I don't know.
And our number 2 spot, Cyclops and Emma Frost. Cyclops and Jean Grey's relationship is perhaps one of the most problematic relationships in the history of comic books. It does have its ups though. But we are not going there today. Oh no. Instead, we are going to turn to Jean's rival, Emma Frost, and look at the weird that went down between her and Scott when Scott was still technically with Jean. And by technically, I mean married. I mean, it's not cheating if you're f***ing someone in your mind, right? Well, that's exactly the logic these two went with. And it's exactly what happened when Scott and Emma first started getting close. Emma was meant to help Scott recover from some previous trauma that he had endured, and in the process was going into his mind using her psychic abilities. Initially, it started off as telepathic therapy, but then became a full-blown affair with Emma making herself appear like Jean and then having sex with Scott in her mind. Something that began as a role-playing exercise to help Scott. Which, I'm sorry, is just really weird, especially when Jean enters Emma's mind and finds them in bed together with Emma dressed up as her. Like, I'm sorry, how do you talk your way out of that one, Scott? Really?
And finally, number 1, my personal favorite. Bane and Talia al Ghul. The Dark Knight Rises was an epic conclusion to the Nolan Bat trilogy. We have Bane mumbling a bunch, doing some football pep talks and breaking backs, and his love interest in the film is revealed to be Talia al Ghul later on. It's a nice big twist, we love it. Talia was brought up by her father, of course being Ra's al Ghul, and was trained to be the second in command for the League of Assassins, or League of Shadows. So Raz's big plan was to get Talia to marry Bruce Wayne, so that there's a worthy male heir afterwards, right? And then in The Dark Knight Rises, she disguises herself as Miranda Tate, and Marion Cotillard did a great job playing her, such a good actor. And it was a nice moment to see on screen, okay? So after Bruce escaped from the pit and returned to Gotham with the intent to stop Bane and save the city, and then as Catwoman says, oh, you're gonna wage a war to save your stuck-up girlfriend? Batman's like, yes. Absolutely. You definitely, most definitely. I've thought about it every night. He's like, yeah, I got this. My back's good. Aim for the mask, you know, pull some pipes out. We're good. Nope. Miranda stabs Batman then, revealing her true identity. Then the audience plays a little bit of catch up, revealing that Bane was her protector and that he loved her. Oh, love it. That plus Talia / Miranda hooking up with Batman, I can see where the anger comes from. It doesn't come out of nowhere, you know? And hey, the best way to fight jealousy is to break backs, and that's just facts. Taylor McWatters.